Hello, everyone. I'm Karissa Dunham from Shining Light on Minnesota. We are actually in Rochester, Minnesota today with some very special guests. I'm very humbled to be here today. I have Colonel Wayne and Dr. Steve with me today. Let's get started, gentlemen, young men, and tell me your story on why we're here and how you got into your roles and what everything is about today.
Well, I guess I can start because it's probably important to let people know how I met Steve, because
Yes.
it was that genesis that produced 3 books in our Veterans in Crisis series. I was introduced to Steve 4 years ago following a car accident.
Okay.
And the result of that were bringing back all of what happened in Vietnam. I had stuffed it for over 50 years. I had told no one. Did not tell my commander or the flight surgeon. I was a flyer in the Air Force.
Yep.
Didn't even tell my wife. And it all came out. And Steve began seeing me every Tuesday at 2. And we still continue to do that even yet today.
Absolutely.
And as we got into it, probably after about 6 months, I had amassed the library of PTSD books that you see on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept telling Steve, I'd like to find one volume that gives a history of PTSD, going back to the Bible and the Greeks and the Romans, and tell the stories of soldiers through contemporaries.
Right.
And so together we wrote Volume 1 and released it on Memorial Day last year.
Yes.
And then, because history is storytelling, Volume 2 was a natural to follow. And that's a true story of a World War II veteran who was in Patton's Third Army during the Battle of the Bulge. He was my uncle.
Wow.
And he was a product of the Owatonna Orphanage, and we'll be going over to Owatonna on the 18th of October for a full day of activity for the entire community.
Amazing.
The Legion, the VFW, the Historical Society, the VSO, the mental health workers, the churches are all pulling us together, and we'll be at the old orphanage to tell Joe's story. And then Volume 3 just was released, which, because of my background coming out of Northfield and St. Olaf, I had written quite a bit about the Northfield bank robbery in 1876 by the outlaw Jesse James.
Yep.
And I said to Steve, no one has ever done a PTSD assessment of Jesse James. Let's just do it.
Right.
And so that book will be released on Amazon this weekend,
Wow.
just in time for Northfield's defeat of Jesse James days, and we'll be there on the 6th and 7th of September.
Amazing. So what do you see? I mean, obviously you deal a lot with PTSD, and talk about the history that you see.
Well, and that was one of the amazing things. As a therapist, cognitive therapist, I give people homework assignments, and it's interesting to those adults listening to this, you hate homework worse than your kids do. And so with Wayne, I threw him a bone, he'd bring back a whole animal. And so we started with these homework assignments, some of which I knew, not as much as I do now, but some of which I knew, that, throughout history. And even though PTSD wasn't officially in the diagnostic manual till 1980, when I came back in 1970, I had it. Nothing changed just because some books said it was real. And all those things I had been experiencing, the nightmares, the flashbacks, the triggers that went off and things like that. I knew a little bit about with World War II with Audie Murphy and Jimmy Stewart and some of the things within there. I knew about shell shock and World War I. But we went back even farther. And when we give talks, sometimes I talk, who's Socrates? Well, he's this philosophy guy. Well, before he was a philosophy guy, he was a combat infantryman for 30 years in the Athenian army. But that's the kind of the journey that we started, and we saw the need. When Wayne first came here, he said, He didn't believe PTSD was real, and the old time people. If you've ever seen the movie Patton or Patton's in the med tent, this guy says, "Well, I've got a nervous breakdown." He says, "You're nothing but a coward," and hits his head, knocks his helmet off, and all this other stuff, and that kind of thing progressing forward. So little by little, and even though Wayne started out as a patient of mine, we collaborated together to put this book out that's again touched out to thousands and thousands of people, and it's amazing. I think we're in all 50 states now.
Yes.
With very little marketing, very little of what's out there. And for example, the other day, a couple days ago, I got a call, and this lady said, "I found my son's backpack, and your card was in it." And she's in San Diego, and so I talked with her about an hour and gave her some resources she could work with. "Where's your son?" He's in Oklahoma. I have no idea how my card got in his backpack in Oklahoma from here, but it was meant to be, and it happened. And every day we run into some of these kind of miracles that is out there, and one person at a time. And that's really the key. There's tens of thousands of people right now, they're out there suffering. What we're here doing, what's the most important thing, which is reaching the message of help and hope is available. And that's what we do, and that's been my entire career. I've been in the mental health field for 52 years now. There are people out there that every night go to bed praying for somebody to be there. And if we can be part of that, somebody, and we're honored to be on this broadcast, because every person that hears this understands that I'm not alone. And there's this bond that vets have, but there's also, I say vets are my brothers and sisters. First responders are our cousins from the same crazy family. And, we've talked first responders. I've had firefighters in therapy that talked about, some of the horrors that I got to see in Vietnam, and every other war that takes place. Police officers the same way. And every day, our battlefield was 15,000 miles away. Every day, first responders go out of their house into their battlefield that's in their backyard. And that's an amazing kind of thing. But that's the nature of the folks that are out there.
Karissa, let me add a footnote to Steve's story that he hasn't told. I didn't realize it when I first met him 4 years ago that he was about to sell his clinical practice. And when I learned it, I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I've got an idea. Let's form a company, a nonprofit." And Steve thought about, we'll call it Veterans Empowered.
Amazing.
We'll use it as a platform to raise money to publish our books. And he and his wife, Ann, who's a certified mental health registered nurse professional, work together as a team, providing free therapy, couples therapy on Mondays, and then individual hourly therapy sessions throughout the week. And he's done 1,200 sessions in the last year. Well, my sidekick Cliff and I travel around the countryside giving talks and delivering our books and pulling what we call a willy. And I can tell you what a willy is sometime.
Tell everybody, Steve, a little bit about your history. Obviously, you're a veteran. And you're a doctor. You studied psychology. How many people have come from the veteran side that actually study psychology and get into the mental health world?
Well, sadly enough, and the official number is 1 out of 6 therapists are veterans. And I think there's 2 or 3 just in Rochester. And we get a lot of therapists in Rochester, 2 or 3 that are veterans. There's 1 probation officer that's a veteran, and social services. And I know your brother's a social worker. I don't know what it is there, but it's got to be the same number. A friend of mine who's a professor at Mankato State says it's actually probably like more 1 out of 20. And then 85% of the mental health professionals in Minnesota are in the metro area. So we're down here in rural Minnesota. There's not a lot of us that are taking place. But I started out going back. I grew up in upstate New York, small town, 11,000 people. When I was 10, my dad developed cancer. And so I had to learn self-resilience at that age and have jobs and things. But did sports, went through, and sports and recreation were my main focus. So I just barely graduated from high school. Went to college. If you don't show up for class, you don't study, you don't open books, don't write papers, there's a very high chance of you not staying there. Mm-hmm. And so after 2 semesters, they said, you look tired, take a break. And since I look good in blue, and as you can tell,
yes,
since
you
I look
do.
good, since
you
I
both
look good in blue and liked airplanes, going back to when I was in 8th grade and seeing the Blue Angels, I joined the Air Force, and I was going to be an air traffic controller, and they had otherwise plans. They said, I scored high on some of the tests, and they said we're looking for intelligence analysts. And so I went through training in San Angelo, Texas for almost a year as an intelligence analyst, and then went to the Philippines and spent over a year there. And then, because I didn't want to go back to headquarters company, there was a lot of things that were not too much fun, like inspections and parades and all of that. I went to Vietnam and spent 2 years there. While I was in Vietnam, and I was going to go back, and I had a job offer with the NSA, my unit worked with an orphanage that was in Saigon. Mm-hmm. And these were kids who had seen their moms and sisters raped and murdered, their dads beheaded, their villages burned. Tremendous, you talk about, early onset trauma with children. And we would go down there, and these kids would sing for us, and they'd bring us cookies, and we'd have stuff sent from home. It was an orphanage run by a group of Franciscan nuns. And that lit a spark in me, and I said, well, this is much better than going back and, keeping work as an intelligence analyst. So made the decision to go to college, wound up going to, of all places, Dubuque, Iowa, something called Loras College, majoring in sociology, psychology. I thought I was going to be a teacher at first. In 1973, there weren't a lot of teaching jobs, and so I wound up working with a residential treatment center for severely disturbed, damaged adolescents that was there. 6 months in, my wife and I took over. So they opened a second house. We took over as live-in house parent directors, which is probably a lot more stressful than Vietnam was.
Right.
And I went to graduate school at the University of Iowa, and it kind of evolved from there. When I got done with graduate school, I became a school social worker, working with the kids that none of the teachers wanted. And they would bring them down, and these were kids, again, that were damaged from alcoholic households and incest and just a whole plethora of things that were within there. And that's what I did for a number of years. In 86, I moved to Rochester to work with a suicide crisis line as clinical director. And 1 out of 6 calls that I got were from veterans. Well, 1 out of 3. And these were guys that had, I don't know how they got some of these guns home, but they did. I couldn't even get my survival knife home, but
right.
And the same kinds of stories. And I had no realization, because I went underground. In 1970, this hat I'm wearing would have literally probably got me killed.
Right.
It was a real dark time to be a veteran.
Yeah.
And I started hearing this. This was in 86. Well, a little bit earlier, in 84, I had gone to a conference in Washington and got to see the Vietnam War Memorial. And in the middle of the night, something woke me up, and I walked through Washington, which I hear it wasn't too safe where it was, but sat for 2 hours in a thunderstorm in front of that wall, and that's when the healing started for me. And coming back, and then 87, I was asked to do a talk at a conference at RCTC, and they said, can you do something on, and I was going to talk on suicide in veterans, and every day, the official number is 22 a day, it's probably more like 40 or 50. And every day, I'd get a call. And so I said, yeah, I can talk about suicide. And he said, oh, by the way, we need somebody that's got some experience speaking that can do the keynote on post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'd heard about it, but I didn't know a whole lot about it.
Right.
So they gave me a brochure from the DAV. And it took me probably 2 weeks to put together a 15-minute talk, because every page I opened was like looking in a mirror.
Right.
And that kind of set the light, so that conference, I told this story that I just shared with you about the wall.
Yep.
And it just kind of took off from there. And then again, when I left, I've been working at a practice for 25 years called Empower, and we worked with veterans, we worked with addictions, we worked with a lot of different individuals. And then when Wayne and I connected, it was a matter of, hey, this did turn on another light, almost like the one that was turned on in that orphanage in Saigon. And we decided to take on this mission. I put a lot of time and energy and money and all this getting to where I am with my clinical skills. I'm not going to let a calendar tell me when I'm supposed to stop.
Right.
So we did this, and we got this beautiful office, and people started coming in, and like I say, we get calls from all over, like the one from the lady in San Diego, and I may wind up talking to that person because we have a HIPAA compliant version of Zoom, so I can do telemedicine if I need to. But the point is finding these people, and so where to where now? I see about 20 to 25 people a week in therapy.
Amazing.
We've talked to maybe 10,000 people in the last year. Cliff and Wayne have driven the miles, delivering books and stuff. But reaching out, and how long are we going to do this? As long as the good Lord lets us do it, and that's what it comes down to.
Steve and Ann have got a 4th volume coming out.
Yes.
Probably next year.
Okay.
And Steve can tell you a little more about it. But it's called The Blank Check. And it's focusing on the family,
Right.
on the spouse,
Amazing.
and what the spouse endures living with someone with PTSD.
Right.
We have a PTSD support group that meets in Rochester. We met last night at the VFW, and these are all veterans with PTSD in various stages. And it's remarkable how the group works and how the group has sort of forms a personality of its own, and people are comfortable there, and they'll open up and tell their story. And our books have been very, very helpful to all of the members, and we're trying to form PTSD support groups in the various communities that we visit, telling our story and distributing the books.
Because you also have a book called PTSD, The History of PTSD, for people that you distribute. And I know that since I've gotten that book myself, I have multiple people that have reached out to me that have now come out and started talking about their own version and what they have, that they haven't even talked about themselves. And, hey, this is something that I feel like I might have, or I want to know more about it from history to see if I have some symptoms myself. It kind of pulls a little bit by little bit out themselves.
The first book that Steve gave me to read and study was a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel A. van der Kolk. And I recommend that to everyone as a primer. But it, too, is even in some ways too clinical and too difficult for some people. Their eyes glaze over reading a lot of the clinical stuff. But in my case, it opened up such windows that I had never dreamt existed. The Air Force had a leadership program that I qualified for. This was before I went into the Pentagon in the 70s. I was in Vietnam from 64 to 68, and then started a Middle East career that lasted for about 10 years, coming out of Vietnam in 1968. And when I got, just before I went into the Pentagon, I was sent off to the University of Southern California to get an advanced degree in leadership. I knew something was wrong, and my coping mechanism was alcohol.
Right.
I was very careful how I managed it.
It's a slippery slope.
And a real slippery slope. And all of my mentors were World War II veterans.
Right.
And the attitude was, oh, hell, we've all got problems. Just have another drink.
Yep.
And it'll be
buried
fine.
in. You're told that you can't talk about things. Just dig it deep. Yep.
And sometimes at the bar, late at night, things would come out. But then, that's just drunk talk.
Right.
So what did I do? I went to USC, and they gave me several alternatives. And I got a master's degree in psychology,
Amazing.
trying to understand
Your
what
own
was
mind.
going on in my mind.
Yep.
I finished my master's in 1970, way before PTSD.
Right.
And none of my professors, opened up any doors.
Right.
like Steve did many years later. So
Because I think with the military and PTSD, you're kind of told you can't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things you keep quiet.
And it's the same way even with first responders. And I'm part of an EAP that serves called Sand Creek that serves municipalities. And we've gone there, and I gave a talk to all three shifts, the fire departments, a couple years ago,
Right.
and that was one of the questions. If you go for help, does that mean you're weak? And the opposite is true. The people that have PTSD are the ones that could endure what most others can't.
Right.
And that's the real secret there, and that it's a medical condition. And one of the things that we talk about in our book, and the book was written, professionals could get a benefit from it, but it's something that is written so that people that say, I'm crazy, I'm broke, I'm something wrong with me and this. No, you have a medical condition, and this
Right.
is what it is. That literally changes the structure of your brain.
it's deliberately written at the 10th grade level.
Right.
And we use some of the format that soldiers are comfortable with in
That they can understand.
military manuals.
Yes. Yep.
And so it's bulleted with simple points. We tell people it's a different sort of book. You don't have to open it and read it from page 1.
You can
through
pick up where you're at.
Pick
Yeah.
it up
Yep.
to any page, and you'll find something helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our other people on our board, who's a 22-year retired Green Beret, says it's like a PowerPoint presentation that we
Right.
got along there, and that's the idea of, okay, how can this something you see hit
Yep.
you that makes
Pick it up at any
sense,
part.
and even spouses that are reading it now, and Wayne talked about the blank check comes from, there's a poster that said when you join the military you write a blank check payable to the United States of America up to including the cost of your life that never goes void. And what they don't talk about is that check has a cosigner.
Yep.
And
It's the
my
family
wife and I
behind
have
it.
worked with a few hundred vet couples, and I've had a lot of wives say, I knew what I was sending away. I wasn't prepared
For what
for
I was
what
getting
was
back.
coming back. And there's what's called transfer trauma. And transfer trauma relates to how my PTSD then spills over and makes impacts on you, changes your behavior because you have to make excuses for me when I can't go to parties. I don't want to go to
Right.
parties because they're crowds and it triggers something, or this is what's going on in my behavior, and I have to make sure the kids don't trigger daddy because
Right.
daddy's got the
Well, the
thing.
civilian life when you get back is not what you're
Yeah.
ready for. And
It's a
hard to
parallel
cope.
dimension.
Yep.
And, like we do talks, we talk about that. And I'm going from military land, like
Right.
the metaverse that they talk
Right.
about on
Yep.
one of the superhero shows. The metaverse, you go in the military, from the second you step off the plane onto that tarmac, you learn a whole new thing. 16 different verses uses for the F word,
Right.
like,
Absolutely.
all the things that go
100%.
along.
Yep.
But then you get this whole different way of thinking, and you can tell military people in settings by the way they carry themselves, by the way the respect they show and everything. And in the 10.5 weeks that I went through basic, that was constantly drilled in, and then when you got out in the field, it was the same thing.
Yep.
And that's what you bring home. Unfortunately, home isn't ready for that.
No.
And they think, what's wrong with you? And that's what we deal a lot with people.
Well,
As
coming
I
to the doors.
mentioned earlier, our number one mission is
Yes.
suicide prevention.
Correct.
And we do that through therapy and through our publications. Steve was talking about how people are afraid to open up.
Yeah.
Will they lose their job?
Right.
What we've observed in several communities around Rochester is that when a suicide occurs, when someone takes their own life,
Yep.
in a fire department, or someone is killed,
Yep.
a police officer is killed, or in the case where we've had 2 of our veterans commit suicide since last fall.
Yep.
Just this week, one of Steve's former clients.
Ugh.
And when that happens, it has a tremendous sobering
An impact. Yep.
Steve was called into Mankato just a couple of weeks ago
Yep.
as a result of a veteran suicide.
Right.
So it And when that happens, then the community opens up even more
Right.
for ideas.
How can we stop this from happening next
Yes.
time? Like why don't we pull together
I've
when it's too late?
been able to make contact with several school psychologists, for example,
Right.
and leave volume 1 with the psychologists, particularly the elementary
Yep.
schools,
Yep.
in the event they see problems with children, because
Yeah.
Steve talked about transfer.
Yes.
And is there a veteran in the family?
Right. Absolutely.
And
Yeah, and back in the day when I was a school social worker, I mentioned earlier, teachers would literally bring kids down to my office and say, "Here, he fix him. He doesn't care, and I don't want him back until you fixed him," and really smashing this kid's self-esteem.
no.
But I used to do an exercise when I do talk about suicide in schools, and that was a big thing back in the 80s. Was, I think, Mankato was what they had, a cluster suicide where you had 5 kids within that same school
Right.
system. And I'd ask the question, I says, "Okay, we've got a grant to train 5 people in your school system in suicide prevention. Who would those 5 people be?" And they'd say the principal, the counselor, and all these other things. I said, wrong answer. The art teacher,
Yep.
the creative writing teacher,
Yep.
the people in the lunchroom, the
Yep.
the bus drivers, because they're invisible,
Yep.
and that's
Maybe
the ones
that.
that pick this
Yep.
up. And I went into a school one time where there'd been a suicide, and they said we had no signs. And I looked, I says, "Can I see this kid's artwork?" And it was there like a neon light,
Absolutely.
with the type of things that were being screamed, not just shouted, screamed out
Behind the
what was
lines, the
going
people
on.
that
And that's the part of what we do, and it's amazing. We've learned, there's something called your dominant thought, and if your dominant thought is there on whatever it is, you see more of it. I've miniature schnauzers. When I got my first one, they started popping up all over the countryside,
Yeah.
like mushrooms, and
Right,
they were
they're
always
all
there,
there,
but
yep.
all of a sudden you notice it. And so,
Yeah.
with what we've done, and we happened to go down to Austin to
Yep.
VFW that had contributed to us earlier and do our 3rd edition, and the head of the VFW had said, "Oh, by the way, our executive officer last week committed suicide." While we were there, we
Right.
you just accept those things. And that's
Yep.
when my wife Ann and I, a month later, they had a family day out in Mankato,
Yep.
and we went out and talked about the impact of suicide on intimate relationships, and had some real good receptivity there. We never would have been there if we didn't go down to Austin and find
Right.
out what was going on.
Right.
So you just keep the radar on,
Yes.
and opportunities are there, they emerge.
You've just
and
got to get the word out.
got to get the word out and know it. And there's a quote I read somewhere: if you're not ready when opportunity knocks, you're going to look like a fool.
Right.
And so we try to be ready. We have books in the car. I have cards on me, and I
Yes.
run into people in grocery stores and
Yeah.
Cliff and Wayne when they're out there and stuff like this. So a lot of my cards are out there. So who knows how that one made its way to Oklahoma, but it did.
How important is it for when people are in their transition from getting out to normal civilian life, if they're going and don't have anybody else, they go and live alone,
Yeah.
like they don't have those stories to tell or anybody to
Yeah.
talk to? I mean, that's where the difficulty you see a lot of times too, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
they
it's
go from there to I've got to live alone and now try to transition.
well,
And
it's
they don't-
essential, and it's better than it was. When I got out,
Yeah.
I went from being in a war zone to drinking a beer in a bar in downtown San Francisco in about
Yeah.
66 hours.
Right.
My transition was, there's the door, catch the bus, goodbye.
And nobody's welcoming you
No.
back. You don't want
No.
to be here. It's
And-
Vietnam time. Like,
Yeah.
get out of here.
I
Yeah.
wasn't ready. I had a flight attendant pour a drink in my lap and call me a blinking baby
Yep.
killer. Friend
Spit
of
on
mine,
you and everything
Yeah, a friend of
else,
mine
yeah.
fell asleep. Well, you know him. He's the one that does the bell.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Yep.
was getting out of the Navy, and he
Ugh.
fell asleep in the airport in O'Hare, and he woke up and 2 guys were pissing on him.
Yep.
And he had to deal with it, and so
Yeah.
that happened to a lot of it. Well, now there's transition things, and and that was
Right.
It's better,
Right. It's getting better. Yeah.
and but it's still got a long way to go. And the public, I wear this hat out, and then same way with Wayne, people come up and they say, "Well, thank you for your service," and all of that. And I say, sometimes some vets like this, some don't.
Right.
I appreciate your service.
Right.
No matter what you did, you put your life on hold
Right.
for 2 to 4 to 6 to 10 to 25 years
Yep.
to serve this country,
Yep.
when only 5% will ever serve. That's
Right.
what the numbers are right
Yeah.
now, and it's been a little higher sometimes, lower, but that's it.
Yep.
90%, 9 out of 10 people will never raise their hand, sign that blank check, and serve. And
Right.
that's their choice.
Right.
But
But
those of us that did,
it's much better than
Yeah.
the Vietnam era.
Right.
I mean, the Vietnam era was really difficult.
Tell your
And
story a little bit about
it-
your Vietnam.
It changed with the Gulf War and the dramatic events that surrounded both Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And today, it's very opening, and there are so many veteran groups. The VSOs, the Veteran Service Officers in each of the counties
Yep.
throughout the United States are the key focal point. But we continue to meet people that aren't in the VA system.
Right.
They were given a quick briefing when they were discharged, but did not follow up.
Or how's the VA now, like with the medical records and finding the medical records? I mean, it's just one of those that you just don't know. There's
it's
a
still
lot.
really convoluted. And when you get to the clinicians, it's usually pretty good. But there's still, I call community care, I have to go through 7 layers with the same initial message. And you know, my VSO friend, and Wayne talked about VSOs. One of the first things when I learn about a vet, do you know about VSOs? Vet service officers are veterans. The VA, most of the people, the VA, and God bless them, they do some amazing work. But VSOs have to be veterans.
Right.
And they know the deal, and they know the benefits, and they're the tip of the spear to get benefits. It took me 50 years to get, I'm at 80% right now, Wayne's at 100. It took me 50 years to get my first rating.
Right.
And because in 1977, I was told, well, just stop drinking and you'll be okay. And there was more to it than that.
Right.
You know, the PTSD, again, in 77, it was still 3 years away from being official. But hooking up with VSOs, finding that happening, and it's amazing. One of the big surprises is how many people don't know VSOs exist.
Right.
And
Or what they are
they're
even for that.
amazing. What they are, that they're there, that they're the ones, and they got the, you know, I could, with my mental health experience and counseling training, I could do 80% of what they do tomorrow. The other 20% would take me 5 to 10 years to learn.
Right.
And, you know, the one that both Wayne and I work with, Jennifer Schumacher, who now works for the state of Minnesota.
I know who she is. Yeah.
She's amazing. And, you know, I wrote a last book, when I signed her last book, I says, after my daughter and my wife, you're the woman I love the most. And
Right.
she laughed at that, you know, because a lot of vets would say the same thing.
She's done a lot,
And
yes.
she's the one that got me my initial rating. Now she works for the Department of Veterans Affairs, but she still works with benefits and helps people like Wayne and I that go through there. But that's the first step. And then turning the light on and finding resources. And, you know, we had a guy Wayne talked about earlier that called us, and he had just gone out of prison in Texas. He'd been spent 6 years down there. Had what they call an honorable discharge because of some, you know, shenanigans when he was in the Marines.
Yep.
But he knew nothing about what was there. He had no ID, he had no benefits, he had no connections within there. So he called us. We have a friend by the name of Lance Garwick who's head of Yellow Ribbon, Beyond the Yellow Ribbon in Red Wing. Found this guy a place to live for then, and we got in here. We got him VA hooked in the system there to at least get him, because with an OTH you can at least get some medical services. And we're working on upgrading his discharge, because the OTH, he had 4 years of really good service and then it went off the rails. Why? Because of certain trauma that he'd experienced when he was in both Korea and Thailand. And he's now living, you know, MACV, which is another resource.
Yep.
They got a house here in Rochester, and he's living there. And he goes out and he does outreach work for us with the books, and he finds people wandering around the streets and gives them a book and talks and gives them our cards and things like that. And that's just one. We ran into a guy. DAV does a benefit or recognition thing out in Casson every year, the barbecue. And, you know, I see people with this, you know, Vietnam vet hat, and, you know, when were you there? And if they say I was there before, I says, well, you're the ones that riled them up before I got there.
Right.
And if it was afterwards, they says, well, I was, you know, at this, and, oh, you were there at the same time. Maybe we got drunk together in the same bar in Saigon, you know. And we talk, and this guy was like, I'm 78, and this guy's about a year and a half older than me. And he had the Vietnam hat on, and he didn't know about any of that stuff. He was there because he heard there was this thing the fairgrounds and barbecue,
Like get-together,
and
barbecue,
food,
free
and all this
food,
other
yep.
stuff. And so he comes over, and I talk to him. We give him a book. We sign a book. He runs into Jennifer. Jennifer goes. She says, "You need to talk to Doc." So brings him back over to me, and little by little, he comes in, and we set up an appointment. He called me. We set up an appointment. He comes in, and I did an evaluation. He says, "Well, I don't have anything wrong. I was a cook."
Right.
I said, "Well, tell me about that." And he said, "Well, he was in a place called Ban Matuit, which is right on near the Cambodian border.
Yep.
And rocket attacks almost every night, mortars and things. Yep. And one night he's in the bunker and he gets up to call nature, and he goes in, and these rockets, 3 walked in, 1, 2, 3, each a little bit closer. The third one went off, blew him through the air, back into the bunker, knocked him out, concussion, burned his back, a number of things. Week later, he gets out and he's in the storeroom for the kitchen, and he finds this bag of flour, this piece of shrapnel about this big, and it could have hit him if he was in there. So I do my usual. I have several different tests that I do that when I evaluate PTSD. It takes 2-3 hours, and he was up there. Right. And I did a full diagnostic, and Jennifer submitted and through. And long story short, this guy now is at 100% disability level. After 55 years of thinking, well, I suppose this is the way life...
I'm just a cook, this is the way it is.
You're right, exactly.
Right.
This is the way it is, this is the way it's supposed to be. And then, we had a few sessions with him and his wife to help educate her on what PTSD was and what goes on. And, things have taken a big 180. And he's, I don't know how many, he's 79, I think he's going to be 80. How many years left? I don't know, but whatever they are, they're a little bit lighter. Because not only does he, get these payments now, but he's got a support system that he didn't know existed, and that it's out there. And again, these are people my age, and the cool thing with the PTSD group that Wayne talked about, you go to most of the service clubs, and it's very rare to find people in their 30s and 40s and things. And the guy that's a commander down in Austin is such an individual, but most of them are people that are older. And our PTSD group, we've got 3, 4, and thinking about who was there last night, we've got 3, 4 that are Vietnam era. We've got Kosovo. We've got Iraq and Afghanistan. We've got that whole gamut of people. But all that common bound is we were signed that blank check. We raised our hand, and this is where we're at now. And Jennifer's done this group for 15 years. So Amazing. It's a long-standing group, and I've been involved with it since, probably about 12. And it's just incredible, and it's a special time. I go there as a participant. Once in a while I have to put the doctor hat on. But, I go there, and it's one of the things in my healing, and I know Wayne's experienced that and the people that we have there. So
a lot of the vets aren't joiners, the young ones. Coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of them were just toughing it out. Many of them know about the VA system and are in it. And what we've found is that when we see a hat, when we see a vet, or we're at an event, reaching out. The other thing is, our website has been very effective. It's www.vetsempowered.org. And there's a lot of information on it. And there's ways through the website to contact us. Also, buy the book if you want to give a book to a vet. And that's what we encourage people to do. The books are also on Amazon.
Amazing.
And all 3 volumes. When we're at Northfield on the 6th and 7th of September, Friday and Saturday. All 3 volumes will be available. 3 volumes for $50.
People to buy in. Yep, absolutely.
Or they're $20 a piece. We've raised a little over $100,000.
Amazing.
And we've invested about $150,000. And we've published close to 20,000 books, and we've given half of them away.
And a lot more to go.
So we need another
more funding, right?
Another $50,000 to reprint our Volume 1.
So you can keep giving more away
which
to those
we
veterans.
Consider our Bible.
And that's the cornerstone, and the other books will come out of that. And like
you can keep helping people if you can get the funding to keep printing more, right?
Yep.
So either that, or we just go out with our Kindle and
Right.
hold it up
Yep.
and say, here, read this.
Here's a
and
projector.
stuff.
Let's have a movie night,
But,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, no.
Because it doesn't cost anything to go out and approach people. And,
No.
and again, everywhere we go, my wife and I are packing up the car from grocery shopping. My current addiction is called Fuel Saver. That
Right.
Hy-Vee has.
Yes,
And
yep.
I go, so it's a coupon night, for 48 hours you get 20 cents or whatever.
Yeah.
So we went and stocked up. And as we're leaving, this car backs up and the guy's got a Vietnam vet plate on. So I, bring him through, and it's just he's backing up and he's going this, I'm doing, kind of this like this and then this when he's close
Yep.
close enough. And he gets out and we get talking. He goes, well, I thought you knew that. And he was an Air Force vet.
Yeah.
And he'd been on a rapid response force, during the Pueblo crisis, which is the Navy version of what I did in the Air Force. And we got talking, and my wife, God bless her, she's learned that if Steve runs into a vet,
Yep. You just
we're going to
do
be here a little bit
you
longer.
talk a little bit. Yep.
And she was, when I got out, I was triggered by thunderstorms, and she was the only one that really understood. And I've been really blessed by having her for 53 years as my wife.
Amazing.
So this guy and I get talking. We go, oh yeah, I was here and I was there and I remember doing this, and I gave him a book, and because I carry some in the car, and it was that kind of contact that I didn't even know this guy existed. And I'm in Panera a week ago, and this guy's got a Vietnam thing, and the guy's wife comes over to my wife, and she says, yeah, well, we're used to it,
Right,
And,
yeah.
and again, he was in Vietnam about the same time I was. He was in the Army, and we had really good conversation. It was the same kind of thing. And he was here from Phoenix, Arizona, to go to the Mayo Clinic.
Yep.
And so he was, just the chance we meet. And, sometimes, wear this hat because we find each other.
Yep.
And not because, I'm cool, I was in the war, and I was things like this.
No,
And
you just
we've
want
had
that
some people
support.
say that.
Yeah.
We want the support, we want the recognition, so I can find, though a lot of times, vets know vets.
Yep.
You got this radar.
And you want to be welcomed. Like, you want the welcoming.
Yeah.
I know one thing with my dad, like, he's taught all of his grandchildren, no matter what you do, when you see someone wearing a hat, you say thank you. You put your hand on your heart, you say thank you. I don't care what branch they're in, where they served.
And that's happening, and, you look at the shift, and, anywhere you go, you run into somebody. And they're young people, older, middle-aged, and they say thank you. And that's the one message. And how you say thank you, again, some people like, well, thank you for what service? I had a job to do and I did it. And it's just, I appreciate you. I appreciate the
From the bottom of my heart, I
sacrifice you've
appreciate you.
made.
Yep.
And what that means to me now,
Yep.
living in America.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.
One of
Yes.
the messages I'd like to leave with veterans and others that are listening today is to tell them a little bit about what some of the ancient writings
Yes.
say about soldiers suffering from PTSD. The ancient Greek playwrights were all generals in the Greek army.
Okay.
And going back to Homer in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and individuals saying that the wise men learn from many things from their enemies. Ajax was written 2,500 years ago in the 10th year of the Trojan War, during a century of plague and war in ancient Greece. Homer writes, 9 years had passed in constant fighting. He could no longer remember the man he was before the war. His best friend Achilles was dead. Ajax had carried his dead friend off the battlefield. Horrifying flashbacks, unreality, no one to share his sorrow. Why am I here and he is not? He could not distinguish the enemy from his wife and child. All he knew was to suck it up and soldier on. He reported to his commanding general, Agamemnon and Menelaus. They betrayed his trust by honoring Odysseus at Achilles' funeral, and in desperation, Ajax falls upon his sword.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Through history,
Right.
writers, contemporary writers recorded what happened to soldiers. And we want to let all of our fellow veterans and their families and others know that what they are suffering, how they feel, is nothing new.
Right.
Yeah. And culturally, one of the honors that we've had, there's a group of Hmong in the cities, and they're part of what the SGU, the Secret Guerrilla Unit, that fought in Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam during Vietnam War. And then when we left, we just left them. We just pulled the plug, kind of reminiscent of what happened in Afghanistan. And so there's about 200-300 of them up in the cities that are still left, and they're like our age, and so they're not a whole lot of time. So we went up there and did training with them, with an interpreter. And there's a second-generation lady who's Hmong, who's a PhD licensed psychologist, and she translated some of the clinical terms that you could translate. And and when we're done, and they had an interpreter, and I had a slide up there with the characteristics of PTSD and the things you look for, and this guy mumbles, he communicates something to his translator in Hmong, and the translator says, he said, that's me. And so here's a man of a different culture, a different time, a whole lot of things.
Absolutely.
And the culture, the timeline, everything, all those change, but the impact to the brain
It all still
is
lines
the
up.
same. And if we could bring Socrates here, and I could do a PTSD evaluation on him,
It still would all line up.
it would line up with what I have is with PTSD, and Wayne has,
And how
the
many other people
come
have it,
through.
and they just don't
Tens of
talk
thousands.
about it. Right.
And, and that's the part. And this guy who's, like I say, 2 years older than me, had no clue. He just thought his life was supposed to be like this, even though it wasn't the like this that he really hoped for.
Well,
In
and
the
even
case of Jesse James, I've showed Steve a number of observations by contemporaries.
right.
And with that information, Steve was able to do an analysis.
And
that
even
makes
this day and
sense.
age, like people my age, like they still are coming forward, and I don't know if I have it. If I don't,
Yeah.
is it PTSD? Is it just a normal walk of life? Am I even able to talk about it? Is it what it is?
And-
Just dealing with everyday life.
And there's specific criteria, and one of the bad things about more visibility is it's become what clinicians sometimes call flavor of the month.
Right.
I had a tough teacher in college. I have PTSD.
Right.
My girlfriend cheated on me. I have PTSD.
Right.
No, you don't. You have something else.
Right.
It doesn't say there isn't a
Right.
condition that's impacting you. But PTSD has to, there's 5 criteria.
Yep.
And criteria A says experiencing or witnessing death or close there, hearing about it, and there has to be that, or sexual assault.
Right.
And if those characteristics
Right.
on criteria A, which is a stressor,
Yep.
the other ones don't come in line.
Right.
But going back in PTSD, now people think of it in terms of veterans.
Right.
It first
100%,
responders,
yeah.
assault victims.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on down the line as long as that criteria is met.
Yep.
And that's the other part of it, and it's a medical condition. I wouldn't hesitate to talk about diabetes or high blood pressure.
Right.
And yet, because this involves, and it's not just with PTSD, it's with mental health in general, there's a stigma.
Yep.
And one of the things when we talk to people, and I've got some pretty rough-edged, hardcore, going into battle, tough guys and tough
Right.
women, and they say, and the best thing, I've got one guy who's a Marine artillery man, and he preaches the gospel of therapy is important. Mental health is important. It's a
100%.
real deal. And this is a guy, if you look at him, he could, break a telephone pole in half with his bare hands.
Well, you're on the front lines. You're seeing things.
that
You're
was
not.
there.
Yep.
And, one of the things, last night our topic was something called survivor guilt. And, even the Greeks, Ajax suffered survivor guilt. And, that's something where why am I here and they're not? And that's a real thing. And you couple that with another thing called moral injury. And the two put together is an accelerant for PTSD.
Right.
And, makes that fire even hotter and brighter and stronger.
Yep.
And so when you go back and you look at it, and there's a very good example when I do talks of being in the movie American Sniper.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
Chris Kyle, the very beginning of that, has to shoot an 8-year-old boy and a woman, and well, had a grenade they were going to throw at the convoy,
Yep.
and when I show that to civilians, they cringe. They say, "How could he possibly do that?"
Well,
that was his job.
that's his
That was
job.
his
Yep.
mission. And if he hadn't done that,
Then look at the outcome.
the
Yep.
the convoy would have been injured. And when I was
Yep.
in Vietnam, there was a young kid with a bicycle. They had C4 attached,
Yep.
and
They strap on
laned
there
it up.
going
Well, he
in.
landed up against the side of a Kwanzaa hut that was metal, and it was a mess hall. On the other side was aluminum mess trays, and they became missiles when they blew off. Killed 50 people with a 8, 10-year-old. But you see that, and you watch his facial expressions in the movie, and he does a great job. The guy that starred the movie,
Yep.
and it works on him. At the moment you deal with it, it's a mission. It's what you're supposed to do,
Yep.
and then you go home
That's what you're trained for, but then
and
you go
you
back to regular
start
life, right?
thinking, what have I done? And a good friend of mine, by the name of Tom McQueen, is a hospice chaplain down in Florida, and he had this guy that was 97 years old, was on Omaha Beach during D-Day, where 8,000 were killed or wounded in the first 20 minutes, and went through the wars in Europe, been through all the toughest battles. Now he's got 2 days to live. And he calls my friend over and he said, I shouldn't have killed those people. They had families too. And every combatant that a warrior has to engage
Yep.
had someone who loved and cared about them.
Right.
But that's the nature of the war. And at the
Right.
moment, you get through it.
Yep.
And then you go back and you start thinking.
You have the remorse.
And the demons start flying around inside. And this
Yep.
guy has had these demons for 75 years flying around inside. He said, so why is Grandpa so grumpy? Why is he so touchy? Why is
Right.
he so there? Well, let's take a look at, again, and trauma-informed care, which is something we do, is know what's wrong with you, what happened to you.
Right.
Tell me your story. Tell me those events. And with this guy who we're trying to get his discharge upgraded, was forced to not stop other Korean troops from executing these 2 adolescents because it would have caused an international incident. Well, that's a sin of omission. That's
Right.
part of one of the types of moral injury. Another guy that was an artilleryman launched a shell into the living room of an Afghan family, killing the whole family. He got bad coordinates, bad intel. But that's a sin of commission, something I did. I did my job exactly as it was supposed to be, but the outcome was still the same. And
But that
that's
was
the
your
kind
job,
of thing.
and those were the orders that you were given.
Yeah, and
you
that's
know?
what vets go through all the time.
Right.
And so when we start talking in therapy, and what do you do in cognitive therapy? It's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, outcomes, and there's a lot more to it. The core beliefs is this foundation of thoughts and feelings, and what's your core beliefs that cause your thought to generate in this way rather than that way, and so we work with that, and we give them tools that helps them. You don't cure, heal, fix PTSD. It's a
Right.
chronic condition,
Right.
but you learn to manage it.
Right.
And that's what we teach people in therapy. That's what we talk about when we go out and talk to groups and,
Right.
and other things like this. And those tools are there. And
Yep.
there's some incredibly good tools. And, back Audie Murphy and Jimmy Stewart's time, they did 1,900 lobotomies,
Yep.
which turned people into zombies. And I have a 10-minute clip of this. There was a man from La Crosse, Wisconsin, that was one of these 1,900. And he was a bomber pilot. He came back and he was having, psychotic episodes and, nightmares and all this. And now he walked around the town and he went to he's just this quirky old man who came in and read the newspaper,
Yep.
had lunch, the same thing every day and all this. But then you learn a story.
Right.
And you go back and look at it. Well, now they've got some different stuff. There's really no medication for PTSD, but there's medication that can work with the symptoms like depression, anxiety. Right. Well, now they're doing some things, and they're trying even things like MDMA, which is this ecstasy, and psilocybin, and they're doing some things with hallucinogens.
Yep.
They're also doing some things with magnets, and they're doing
Right.
some things with, because your brain is an electrical device. And so hopefully research is going to continue on and start to look at what's working there. Right now, there's only 3 what they call evidence-based therapies to deal with trauma. There's about 400 different techniques and schools of thought like this. But the one I use is something called cognitive processing therapy, where you deal with stuck points, you deal with the things that are keeping you stuck, both assimilated stuck points, which say, good things happen to good people, bad things to bad people, bad thing happened to me, I must be a bad people. And so not only does that deal with how you feel in the here and now, it also deals with how you can affect and accept good things. I feel good, I'm not supposed to.
Right.
And I had a man say, well, I can't go to church, I'm too dirty. And then there's over-accommodation that says, well, all people can't be trusted because somebody, and we work with looking at the rational and the irrational thinking.
Right.
And give them some tools to analyze this, and then when they get in these situations, this is something they can work with. There's also something called prolonged exposure therapy, which deals with, almost kind of become bored with your trauma. You kind of diffuse that. It's used a lot with phobias as well. And then EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's another one. Those are the three. And that's it. And I'm not trained in EMDR, but I'm trained in prolonged exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy, and have worked those sessions with a lot of people. And
Steve will be holding an all-day session on November 11th, Veterans Day.
Nice.
At Wild Wings.
At Wild Wings?
In Lake City.
Okay.
For other therapists.
Like a continuing education session?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll run from 9 to 4.
Good.
And information is going out. One other footnote, just yesterday I received an email from the Ukraine Catholic University. When we met you at Tee It Up for the Troops, a chaplain from the Ukraine group in the Twin Cities contacted us, and they want to translate our Volume 1 into Ukrainian.
Amazing.
And they've done a lot of work. There's an Israeli group. You can imagine the trauma that from nearly 4 years, 3.5 years of war, thousands being killed each week, and literally hundreds of thousands of combat wounds, aside from the invisible wounds of combat.
Yep.
And an Israeli group who specializes in PTSD.
Yes.
Went to Kiev and set up the nucleus of their program. And hopefully our book will be able to help thousands of Ukrainians suffering from PTSD.
For sure. How can people find these books? And where can they find them at, and how can they order them, and how can they buy copies of them?
Our website is www.vetsempowered.org, VETS empowered.org.
And your next session is on September 6th that you're going to be at?
In Northfield on the 6th and 7th, all day at the Northfield VFW during Northfield's defeat of Jesse James Days.
Yeah, and I'll be there on the Friday, and then Wayne will be there on the Saturday with Cliff. And so welcome to talk to people. On our website, there's a contact thing that goes straight to my email.
Okay.
And, I'll get back to them that way. Whatever, there's no limit. If people need to talk, we're here to do that. We'll go out, and it's amazing, this Ukrainian thing. Originally, we did presentation at a church on a Sunday night in Goodhue, Minnesota.
Yep.
And we this guy in the group goes, well, is your book available in Ukrainian? And we did some checking. Well, there's no direct course to get it translated.
Right.
And so then we run into him at the Tee It Up for the Troops a couple weeks ago. And now there's 3 of them, not just the one guy I talked to. And we get talking, and the exciting thing is that we're putting something in motion to where we're going to allow them our copyright to translate at least book 1. 2 and 3 probably won't make a whole lot of sense there, but our book 1, getting it translated into Ukrainian. And the kids that I saw in 1960 and 69 at that orphanage in Saigon, their parallel kids are the kids you're seeing now that are going to be in some orphanage in Kiev or
They're
where else like that. They're going to be the ones that
are going to need.
And their symptoms are going to be exactly the same as what you saw. It's just going to be a cycle
over and
in
over.
Saigon, and you can go back every time and place with any war that happens.
The Russians have suffered even more casualties.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's just kind of a cycle that keeps going over and over again.
And then you go to Gaza and you look at what's going on there. And again, the same kinds of things. And, well, what did we suffer? Well, my big pinnacle point when I was 10. My dad had cancer, and financially we went things. Mean kids in junior high school. You didn't get invited to a party, or nowadays somebody says something bad on
social
on
media
TikTok
or whatever
else like this. That's nothing compared to walking out your back door and having your house blown up behind you.
Right.
Or watching your dad be executed.
Right.
And that's the trauma that some of these folks go through.
Right.
And there's no recourse other than just suck it up and get through.
Or the kids that have explosives strapped to them and having to go out for their community and be walked down the street.
That kid in the Chris Kyle movie. Look about 8 years old. They don't have to.
You're a martyr for your faith.
Here's a grenade, and this kid's running toward them, and there, and then this woman picks it up, and the same thing. And that was some of their one of the guys that I work with who very, very significant PTSD was permanently disabled, medically discharged from an IED on Christmas Day when he was there. But one of the first suicide bombers he saw when they got the rest of the story, that this guy wasn't a big supporter of the cause of ISIS or whatever it was like that, but they kidnapped his family and they said, "You go out and martyr yourself, or we're going to kill your whole family."
Yep.
And that was something that's a lot more frequent than people that haven't been there or talk to people who've been there. That know about, and they just say, "Well, that's a horrible thing," or "This is like this." Look at the rest of the story, because everybody has a something. I don't care who they are, and whether they're a glamorous movie star, millionaire, whatever else like this, or there's somebody living under the bridge. They all got a something.
Right.
And find that out. Ask them. Learn their story. Tell me more. All the classes and courses and things that I've taken in college, I could have skipped a lot of it with just 2 sentences.
Right.
Help me understand, followed by tell me more.
Yep.
And then you shut up and listen, other than asking clarifying questions. And it's amazing what you can learn. I have a good friend who has got a whole mission about doing that. Reach out to people, connect with people.
That's why we do the podcast, right? It's to hear your story, get more intentional, and hear your why. I think
there's people out there listening.
Yep.
That again are going,
they care.
Am I the only one? Am I crazy? Am I defective? Am I this? And a lot of times people, I get done with an assessment, they go, "Well, Doc, am I crazy?" And I said, No. I don't believe in the word. I think it's as bad as the N word or the B word or other words like that. It's a disrespectful term. Your brain has suffered an injury, and with trauma and PTSD, it's only event-based. Something has to happen that puts you in this condition. It's not something you're born with.
Right.
It's not something that if some damage happened to your brain through trauma that physically changed the structure of your brain so that it responds in this type of way.
Yep.
And that's it.
Right.
And that's itself tremendously liberating when I talk to people in therapy and they say, "Well, what'd you find out?" And I say, "Well, this is what this is. This is the criteria," and we talk about that in our book, the criteria for PTSD, and there's 5 specific criteria that you look at according to DSM-5. There's a test out there called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, which is an incredible instrument that was first developed by 2 doctors in 1995 and has now gone worldwide, that talks about early childhood trauma and gives you a real good picture, because the DSM doesn't look at the ACEs material. You put all that together, and it gives you, the Jesse James thing was relatively easy. And somebody says, "Well, how you do a PTSD analysis on somebody who's been dead for 150 years or so?" If you go back and you look at his story, you look at the events, some of the other gang members were a little harder, but Jesse James, it's a very clear, definitive path to what the outcomes were, ranging from 3 years old when his dad left to, he didn't fight in the Civil War, but his brother Frank did. He came home and told stories. Then he was involved with Quantrell, who did guerrilla warfare after the Civil War. And Missouri was a civil war within a civil war, because there's the free and the slave leanings and that within Missouri, which was more stark than a lot of the other Confederate states. And then the picture becomes clear.
Right.
And that doesn't mean what Jesse James did was okay. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation.
It makes sense. Yeah.
It's just a simple fact of life. One thing that we didn't mention, only in passing, since 9/11, We've had about 7,000 killed in action in the Middle East wars. But since 9/11, we've had over 300,000 suicides.
Right.
So the numbers are astounding.
Right.
And that's why our mission is
Still
to save
stands.
lives.
Right.
And we do it through free therapy and through free books.
Right. And you want to save those lives. It's one of those, it's important for people that have served,
They're worth
whether
it.
they're a Purple Heart or whom they are, to share their story, but they're worth it. They need to get the help that they need.
And we need help to carry our work forward.
How can people donate money? On
we're
your
a-
website still, or
Right.
Yes.
are there other ways too?
There's a donation tab on our website. We will talk to any group that wants to listen to us.
And the people that have
Yeah.
your books, your information is in the back of those
Yes,
books.
it
The
is.
sources are
Right.
there. Yep.
Yeah.
And they can reach out to me. I can put them in contact with you.
Or just simply going to the website. The
Yes.
website's a good contact
Absolutely.
source that will send, like I say, you do the contact tab, that goes straight to my
Yep.
email. Or there's a lot of questions, a lot of resources. There's a
Yes.
resource tab.
Yep.
And, people with PTSD, there's something called the National Center for PTSD, probably the best source out there for additional information on PTSD. And it's got things for professionals and assessment tools. It's got things for families. And it's free.
Yep. So that'll be all on your website.
You want to get brochures or things like this, it's out there. And so that
Yes.
resource tab
People
is there.
will see our QRC code as
Okay,
well,
good,
which
easy.
helps them get into it
Yep.
very
Perfect.
quickly. We've got little flyers in a lot of the restaurants and
Nice.
places around town.
Good. And I'll take some of those with me too. So we'll have those there. We'll have them. So when the podcast is released, which will be next Wednesday, exciting, then it'll go out in our newsletter. And the newsletter will be the link to your website so people will be able to donate. They'll be able to buy the books, really find these books. I'll take some books with me and hand them out to some of the veterans that I know as well. And we'll really get the word out there for sure. Yes.
Thank
Well,
you.
I
thank you.
appreciate
Thank you.
having
Yeah.
you guys on today. And from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you both. Thank you for everything
Appreciate
you've done for
you.
the country, and
Thank you,
you're both
Karissa.
amazing. Yes. And we'll have to talk later on about stories from my dad that he shared, and Wayne, everything that
We will.
you have had. Yes. Thank you.